The pandemic has led to what could become a permanent change in the way we conduct transactions. Cash may no longer be king. The shift to digital in the financial services industry was already underway prior to the pandemic, and now there may be no going back. Joining us now to talk about the acceleration and the view from Europe and Latin America are Charlotte Hogg, Visa's Chief Executive of European Operations, and Sebastián Kanovich, co-founder and CEO of dLocal, which just last month became Uruguay's first unicorn. Thank you so much both for being here. So
Thanks for having
let's start. Of course. I want to start with this first idea. Cash may no longer be king, but, we were talking about, Sebastián, where you're based in South America, as well as in Europe. It seems like I'm always pulling out my wallet, to pay with cash. I haven't been there since the pandemic. Charlotte, has the coronavirus killed cash?
It hasn't killed cash, but there has been a real shift to digital. So whether it's the use of contactless transactions and the widespread adoption of that, or whether it's the shift to e-commerce, you can see real evidence in changes in behavior. So, I think the therapists tell us that you take 21 days to make a habit and 90 days to make it permanent. Well, we're definitely counting more than that. And if you think that now we've seen 500 million transactions in the contactless space in Europe in the new limits that were raised over the course of the last few months. And if you think that 20 of the countries around Europe have seen a 25% increase in e-commerce, and large numbers of cards have been used in e-commerce that have never been used before, I think you have to see that there has been a real shift and adoption of digital and an embracing of that technology that perhaps we haven't seen before.
Yeah, Sebastián, what do you think? What's the status of cash in Latin America?
Sure, I echo what Charlotte just said. Obviously, we'd all been waiting for cash to go away for quite a while. I think those habits do have a long life, and if anything, we only exist on the online world, so we have seen that shift from offline transactions to online transactions. And we do see more and more people transacting online. They just don't have an option. And if anything, that has been a huge improvement. We live in emerging markets, and we've seen that people who historically wouldn't be buying online, from basic things like retail to streaming services, are for the first time going online and making those purchases. Our task, and I think our role as infrastructure players, as players on the payments ecosystem, is to make sure that no one is left behind. So some users will still want to use cash. We need to enable them to do so. That's not a priority for any of us. We all like card-based methods. We all like wallets much better. But something we've learned the hard way is that you try to educate the market, but only so much. If you push that boundary too much, you're leaving people behind. And at the end of the day, someone who cannot transact online these days, it's outside of the economy. So we really need to make sure that we have as wide a net as possible, and make sure that over time, yes, we're going to move more and more users to more online-based methods. And I think the efforts that challenger banks do, the efforts that the networks do, the efforts that payments companies do are all going to help, but it's going to take some time, and we need to bridge that gap, and we are optimistic.
Yeah. Charlotte, I want to go back to that idea that you were talking about with contactless payments. And it did take the pandemic for governments to raise the limit on how much you can actually purchase in a contactless way. And I'm pretty sure the concern there that, the reason it took so long was because there was a concern that contactless payments might also, have fraud or be more fraudulent. Has that come to pass?
Absolutely not, actually. There are different limits around the world on contactless, and Europe wasn't as high in some cases as many other places. So no, we really haven't seen that. And importantly, what we've seen is that businesses are embracing this too. If you're at a till in a supermarket, I think you're really quite pleased when the customer doesn't want to always put a PIN pad in, or you don't need to handle something in this kind of climate. So there's been a real embracing of this technology, a confidence in it. And I think that's extended to the online world as well. We're seeing 40% of cards in Belgium that had never been used in e-commerce being used. And we see that in many other countries as well. So the real focus now is how do you help those businesses that are not equipped to take digital payments and particularly small businesses who are so vital for GDP and for employment, to actually move into being able to take digital payments. And that's a huge priority for us, and one we've got a series of commitments around to help digitize Europe's small businesses and the world's small businesses over the next number of years, because they're going to be vital to any recovery.
Yeah, how do you break down that barrier? I mean, is it clearly, there's the one part of the consumer, but there's also, getting businesses to open up and accept these payments, and what are the barriers that still exist there?
Well, I mean, actually, there's a ton of innovation taking place in this space. It's been one of the, I think, exciting and perhaps untold stories of the last few months. But if I look across Europe, and I'm sure there's fantastic, in fact, I know there's great examples from Latin America as well. You see that businesses like a Shop Appy in the UK, which are taking entire high streets online, or companies like Nebenham in Germany, who are doing the equivalent in big cities. So giving small businesses platforms that they can then sell, not just to their customers who've known and loved them for years and who do want to shop locally, but actually beyond as well. So the innovation in this space with names probably we've never heard of is exciting and making a huge difference. And I think it's important we recognize and support that.
Yeah, Sebastián, I'm interested to hear your take. I know dLocal, you facilitate payments for big companies like Amazon and Uber and Didi, and throughout Latin America as well as the Middle East and Asia. But what is the small business picture there? What's it going to take to make digital payments a possibility in emerging markets?
Sure. I think there are two keys here. Number one, it's the big players do have a responsibility towards driving adoption. Okay, so companies like the ones you mentioned, more and more get their growth from emerging markets. So somehow they are building the framework. They're saying, okay, there needs to be a payments company. There needs to be a fraud prevention company. There needs to be a way for users to pay. And I do believe that big businesses, big online businesses, do have a responsibility towards being the first ones there. Having said that, it should be easy for anyone to accept payments online. And that's a job we all need to do. And I think it's a task that it's going to require a lot from the networks, from Visa, from MasterCard, making sure that we gain as much access as possible. But at the same time, we need to make sure that merchants, online businesses, are willing to do it. Obviously, the pandemic has been a huge help. Before it was an option, today it's a must. So we've seen adoption that we hope would happen in 5 years, happening in a matter of weeks. But I don't underestimate the power of businesses driving innovation. Users are there, users want to buy online, but it takes two to dance. And businesses have probably been a little bit slower to react, particularly in emerging markets where those haven't been a priority for a lot of our customers. They said, okay, our priority is Europe, and our priority is the US. But suddenly they do realize that they have a huge customer base that are sitting in India or in Nigeria or in Mexico or in Brazil. And those users want to pay as well, and they want to get paid as well. So they are driving a lot of this innovation. And companies like us, we need to build infrastructure for other merchants and online businesses to sit on top. We cannot expect the small mom and pop shop to be the one building the infrastructure. That will need to be built by someone else, and they need to have an easy access to that infrastructure once it's there.
Yeah. As you're looking at these emerging markets, I mean, what makes a market attractive to you? What are you looking for in terms of where you're going next? And it doesn't sound like you're going much to Europe.
It's funny, from the outside, one do believe, I do believe that Europe, it's when you see it from the outside and when you compare it with markets like the ones we work on, like Nigeria, India, they are clearly more developed. And we really like to go after those markets where there's huge friction, when there's a big population that is going online for the first time and they're buying online for the first time. And to be also very honest, we need to make sure that it's relevant for our online businesses. We do try to ask a lot to our big enterprises to say, okay, where are your customers sitting? And a few years back, no one would have mentioned Nigeria. Today, Nigeria, it's a big priority. Mexico, Brazil are markets where a lot of the growth is going to come from. It's tougher for our companies to grow in the US, to grow in Europe, but they're finding double-digit growth in LATAM. They're finding even triple-digit growth in Africa. So we try to go after markets that have big populations, a lot of people online, and a lot of friction, because when there's friction, it means that there's a lot of value to be added.
Charlotte, can I ask you, to respond to that? It sounds like he's saying that growth is hard to come by in Europe. Do you agree with that?
I heard it differently. So I heard, and I may be wrong, Sebastian, I heard that the European markets are mature in a different way. We do see a ton of innovation across Europe, actually, particularly in fintech. A lot of the fintechs are born in Europe and then go global. And also, I think the point that you made is there's a great richness of cultures around payments in Europe. You know, you've got 28 countries of the EU. Actually, Visa Europe includes 38 different countries, and you see an enormous difference and richness of cultures. I think there are some common themes actually in terms of what consumers really care about. I mean, they care about the resilience and security of whatever payment form they're using. They care about the protection of their data. They care about the value they get from a transaction. You know, just think of all those people who bought holidays and are really quite glad that they've got the guarantee of that refund. So I interpret it, maybe because I'm biased, that Europe is a really interesting and quite mature market, and so is ripe for different kinds of innovation than the very powerful elements that you're talking about, Sebastian.
Jenna, I would like to have markets like Nigeria in a situation like what we see in Europe. I think Europe and the US are obviously the guiding post. We would love to have emerging markets being in that position with that level of innovation. We are just starting from a slightly earlier stage, and it's our role to make sure we get there. So I think innovation in Europe definitely helps in the sense that we have something to look after and say, okay, this is how it works, this is how it should work, let's work towards it.
Yeah, Charlotte, I'm interested in exploring that more. You know, you do see so many different ways to pay in Europe. There's a lot of innovation, you know, whether, you know, not just Visa, but also Revolut and Klarna and all these different things. What is it about Europe that's driving that innovation? And is it too much? Or, you know, do we have too many choices as consumers?
Well, I think there's a distinction between what you're using to bank with, you know, and Revolut is that they're an issuer technically, and Klarna facilitates both issuing and buying in installments, and the actual rails that you're using. I think that's obviously an important distinction. But I think Europe brings together three components. One is relatively developed and mobile savvy population. You know, lots of innovation in fintech and in technology, but also, and importantly, real innovation in the regulatory space. I mean, we're the first region that's gone live with open banking, with the Payment Services Directive too, and that is, you know, definitely a model that people are thinking about and considering, and I think could lead to some pretty profound changes. So just to name two, one is, I think, in a digital world, payments become the actual moment of payment starts to maybe disappear. And when that happens, the way that people manage their lives changes, right? You don't take out your wallet and think, do I have the money? You think you need to be able to plan that ahead. And then the great promise of open banking is that perhaps for the very first time, you can actually aggregate all of your financial bits and pieces from different places and make choices up front on how you want to pay. So, you know, there's great innovations around that, particularly for kind of dependent cards. So, for example, you know, I have two children, and both of them have cards that I get to set the rules on how they spend, and I get to know when they've spent. And that's a really interesting development that you can see taking place in many different ways. It's just a microcosm of the kind of innovation that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pause now because we have a couple of questions from our audience. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Jen.
Hey.
Hey, thanks, everybody. So this question is for both of you, but we'll start with Charlotte. What's the biggest impact that COVID has had on your business?
I mean, clearly the thing that happened post the pandemic hitting was the declining cross-border travel, and that you know, as we all know, still looks pretty light. So that's obviously had an impact.
Sebastian, do you want to take and answer that
Sure.
too?
So for us, it's been 5 years and 2 weeks, and it's we exist on the online world. So a lot of the adoption and a lot of the priority for emerging markets that we hope would exist in 5 years' time has happened in a matter of weeks. So it's been definitely some of the most challenging times in our history as a company, but also some of the most exciting. So that's our view on this.
No, I think you're right, Sebastian. I think for all of us, perhaps it's amongst the most important and interesting moments of our careers, certainly maybe our lives. This is such a very human tragedy. And so trying to navigate through the impact on all of our colleagues and ourselves, as well as lean into these incredible changes that are happening and making sure that we position the business, that's I'm sure what all of us face. And as I said, I think could be amongst the most important moments that we've had. But maybe I'm just older than you.
I completely echo that. It's been a huge challenge, but also an interesting time. Definitely a tragedy at a global level, but I think companies like ours have a role to play, and it's important for us to understand it and be brave and go ahead with it.
Thanks. Robert, did you have a second question?
Yeah, we'll start with Sebastian and then move to Charlotte. PayPal made waves recently when it enabled Bitcoin functionality, and another big fintech, Square, recently invested in Bitcoin. What is your sense about the future of cryptocurrency? Are you bullish on it? Sebastian, we can start with you.
Sure. We are super bullish at a personal level. We don't count on it at a company level. We exist in emerging markets, and regulation, it's a key component of everything we do. So realistically, we don't want to be the first one out there. We need to make sure that the central banks are feeling comfortable. And at the same time, our thrive, it's for adoption. We need to make sure that users are paying the way they want to pay. And yet they are not choosing crypto. We would love to see it happening, but we haven't seen it happening yet. And we do believe we had other fights to fight than driving adoption in the crypto world.
If you want to take that too.
No, I mean, sure. I think Sebastian, you put it really well. And I was just actually reflecting, having seen Mark on screen earlier, that he made a very good speech, I think, a couple of years ago on what a cryptocurrency is versus a crypto asset, where one is fundamentally a fiat currency and one is fundamentally not that because it doesn't fulfill the requirements. But that looking at these spaces and understanding the technology and what they're offering to individuals is something we all need to be very mindful of. So I think I'll refer to him as the earlier speaker.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure speaking with both of you. So thank you so much for all of your time. And I look forward to seeing, all this fintech and innovation in Europe as well as Latin America.
Thank you.